Hello, my name is Jim Hennager. I'm here to offer you some ideas on personal problem solving. Let me kind of explain what we're trying to do with these videos or this program called Reentry, Life in Transition. We have offered to develop a number of courses that we are hoping will be of help to people that are going through some major changes in life. And that could be a situation where you're going through divorce. It could be a situation where you've had a death in the family. It could be a situation where you're coming out of the military and trying to adjust into regular society again. It could be a situation where your health has failed and you have to make major adjustments. It could be that you've been in prison and you're now out and you want to stay out. So you need to resolve a number of issues that are coming at you. And so I'm hoping that this video can give you some ideas. It's not going to be a situation where I'm going to solve your problems, and I'm not sure that anybody can. But what I'd like to do is provide you a structure of ways that you could look at problem solving from a personal point of view, and I'm hoping that it gives you some ideas then that you can try to develop a pathway to helping your situation out. Now, I've taught sociology for many years, started in 1969, so I've been around for a while, thousands of students. I have noticed in the last 5 years that students are dealing with a lot of personal issues. I've had a number of veterans coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and they're having some pretty serious problems adjusting. But it's not just for veterans, it's for anybody that's going through life changes, and I'm hoping that you can get something out of this that'll help you. Now, it's really a two-part video. This first part you can actually view for free by just going on to YouTube and taking a few minutes and watching the video. The second part of it is for getting credit, which would mean that you need to go to the end of this tape and answer the exercise questions that I'm going to recommend to you, and submit those to me. And you need to go through the www.newindependentlearningcenters.info site to get credit. It'll link you then to the yescourse.com platform, and there you'll get registered and pay your $40 for this course. Now, $40 isn't a lot of money, and I'm not trying to make money on this. What that involves is paying the software platform people who are in Australia. They get their nickels out of it. We have an administrative team that needs their nickels to provide the kind of resources to keep track of students, and we have outside people who are representing this program to churches and to organizations in many states in the United States as well as other countries. So you can see that $40 will go very quickly, and the dollars that I get back out of it, I just kind of offset some of my time to answer your questions and possibly interact with you on some of the issues that you're dealing with. But again, I'm not here to solve your problem. I'm here as a coach, as a life coach, as a facilitator, maybe in part a cheerleader, if you want to take it that way. But I'm just hoping that it provides you some pathways for your own issues. Okay. Now, you're probably thinking that how how can this older white male who's been in academia most of his life be of any help? And I think you need to appreciate that everybody goes through problems, and sometimes they're very severe, sometimes they're very emotional, sometimes they don't have answers. And people don't get divided out by how much money they make or where they live or whether their skin color is a little different. We all have problems. And I've been in situations where I didn't see answers, and I have experienced some ups and downs that I would say were rather severe. So I know what you're going through. I've been down so bad that I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. I've been forced into bankruptcy and had to watch the IRS come in and try to sell my home, which I lost. I lost the car, and I didn't feel like there was anything I could do about it. I was forced into that as a business matter, and it didn't do me any good. You know, it came at me. I had to deal with it, and it took months to get through that valley, to come out of it, and then it took another 10 years to come back up to where I had been before it came on me. So I'm a risk taker. I'm willing to go after things that I think are important in my life, my family's life, and sometimes they don't work out. That's not necessarily a reason to believe that you've been defeated or that you can't do it again. And I would encourage you that if that's the situation, that you get back up on your feet and go after it again. If the problems that you're facing are more of an emotional situation where you're just sad, you're depressed, you're anxious, there could be a lot of reasons why these come at you. And let me kind of talk to you about some of the experiences that I've had with students particularly. And these students are all ages, all kinds of backgrounds. I have noticed in the last few years a number of students dealing with deep depression and even suicide kinds of thinking. So I'm not coming at this as an expert. I'm not coming at this as a psychologist or psychiatrist. I'm not going to ask you to come in for 14 meetings so that I run up your bill. I'm not going to prescribe you any medicine, which I actually am not in favor of, to be honest. I think we've gone that route, and I think in many cases the medicines are causing as much problems as the problems themselves. But what I would like you to appreciate is that I'm going to offer you some ways to look at problem solving, give yourself some structures that you can use to put together some possible solutions, and hopefully being able to put some priorities on things that you need to do to come out of this valley, come out of this time period where you're dealing with a lot of negative kinds of things. In 1978, I wrote an article which was called The Upside of Down, Personal Problem Solving. And in 1978, if you weren't around in that time period, we didn't have personal computers, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have emails. And so I wrote this article, and I wanted to offer it to other people, not again to make any money, but to offer whatever I could. So I put it into a popular magazine, one of those magazines, entertainment magazines that you see on your way checking out of a grocery store. And I had to pay, I think, $400 to put this in that magazine. It was just a few sentences basically saying that I'm offering this article to anybody that would like to pay, I think, $2 to have it sent to you. So the $2 was simply to cover the cost of copying it and mailing it. And the letters were to come back to a drop box at this magazine. A few weeks went by and I didn't get any response, so I figured, well, nobody has any problems. And then they started coming by the hundreds. Till I think maybe in the next month, I probably received 800 to 1,000 letters, personal letters, from people all over the world. And these people had some really very serious problems. I mean, some of them had been sold, literally sold by their parents, to marriage, and after they had children and just could not take it anymore, they wanted out. Or in another case, they'd lost everything and they were about ready to lose their house. In another case, they had tried a number of different jobs and they just could not find, a job that worked for them. Well, I learned two things. One was that people have some very, very serious problems. And anybody who says, well, just pull up your boots and solve your own problems isn't being realistic, because it's very possible that you could get into a situation where it would seem like there's no door, no option, no way for you to get out of that situation. And it's very possible that that's true. The other thing that I learned was that almost every one of the letters was asking me to solve their problem. And that wasn't the intent of the article. It wasn't the reason why I was offering it. And I'd like to be careful today that that's not what we're getting into, because I'm not offering you answers or solutions. I'm just offering you a way of looking at problem solving, and hopefully some kind of structure that you can use to help yourself. So it's a bootstrap kind of idea, and I'm here to be kind of your coach or your cheerleader, if I can be that, okay? So I hope we have that understood. Now, my academic background has been more in looking at, studying, investigating macro problems, very large problems, like political issues, economic issues, trends in family changes, those kind of macro issues. And when you're looking at large issues like that, there are some techniques in problem solving, decision making, design that you can apply to that kind of problem solving. And if you were in a corporation today at the upper levels and doing top level strategic kind of planning, you would look at problems much more analytic than what I'm going to suggest today on the personal level. But it's a good idea to know what those are about. Certainly looking at things systematically, looking at things cybernetically over time. These are some skills that top managers have developed, and they are useful. There's no doubt that companies making decisions on new projects and new investments have to look at a lot of different variables. They have to look at a lot of different options, and they have to have priorities where the company needs to make 8% or 10% or 12% return on their investment, or they're going to go broke. So companies looking at problem solving are going to look at it in some more finesse ways than what I think you need to as an individual. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some things that you have to structure to understand how problems affect you. And the first area that I'd like you to appreciate is that a lot of what is affecting you is related to how you view the world. If you're a person that looks at the world as though it's a cup half full, you're not going to be as likely to get depressed. if you're looking at the world as though it's a cup that's always half empty, very negative, a very pessimistic person, you're likely to look at everything that way. You're probably going to get out of bed in the morning in a negative mode or a negative mood, and that mood might not change all day long. So negative people tend to have more problems, more personal problems. There's just no way around that. And so one of the things that I would like to do is go through a couple exercises with you, just for you to look at yourself. Now, there's no magic way to look at these exercises and say, well, I am or I'm not positive or negative. But if you need to pause this, I'd like you to get just a couple sheets of paper, blank paper, and it can be any paper. It could even be in the back of an old envelope if you don't have much around. But I would like you to do a few exercises with me, paper pencil exercises, okay? So you can pause this and go get the paper and pencils. Okay, let's start with a simple exercise where on the back of the first sheet of paper, I'd like you to draw 3 larger circles and 3 smaller circles, okay? Just large enough that you could put a word or two in each of these circles. And in the large circles, if you're there already, I would like you to write in some of the issues that you're seeing right now as being big issues, big problems, okay? 3 of the biggest issues that you're faced with right now. It could be things like, you don't have a car that runs, you don't have money to buy food, you don't have money for rent. It could be, you're not getting along with your spouse, or you're not getting along with your friends. Just put into the big circles the biggest issues that you're dealing with, okay? And then go to the smaller circles and try to identify some smaller circles, issues for those smaller circles. So you're going to end up with 6 problems that you're dealing with, and 3 of them are going to be larger problems, and 3 of them are smaller, okay? And take a few minutes. You can pause it again to do that. And when you're ready, I'd like you to turn the paper over, and on the back, do 3 larger circles again and 3 smaller circles. But this time, I'd like you to identify some of the big things that are going okay in your life. It could be your health, or it could be your relationship to your wife, or it could be that you've been offered a job. Just pick out some that are big, and again, some that are smaller. A smaller issue could be, you had a great breakfast, okay? Or you've exercised today, or, it could be anything. But I'd just like your mind to be able to separate out the big issues and the smaller issues. And the reason I took a couple reasons. One is I'd like you to be able to, flip back and forth on this sheet of paper and compare the negatives to the positives, and come to a kind of a conclusion. Now, are these negatives bigger issues than the positives? Okay, so if you had to weigh them, against each other, are you coming out with more serious problems than you are serious positive kinds of things? Okay, and that's important so that you have a feeling of where you're at in terms of these issues. Okay, the second hope of doing something like this, when problems are coming at you, they come at you like a large black cloud, and they come in on you, and you can get to a point where the negative things around you just overcome you, and this black cloud just hangs on you wherever you go. What I'm encouraging you to do is to figure out that you can take those issues and divide them out, okay? Every issue has parts to it, okay, and things that are related to it. And my hope is that you can see that there's a lot of different big issues and small issues, some positive and some negative, and that helps get your mind off of just one issue. Because when you have one serious issue that you're dealing with, you tend not to think about anything else, okay? And that's where things can get into a loop. Okay, now let me talk a little bit about loop thinking, basically, is what it amounts to. Maybe we don't know exactly how the human brain works, but we do know that from very early age on, your experiences are going into your brain and memory in patterns. And it's my opinion that from a very early age, even maybe before, when you're in the womb, you're picking up sounds of music and your parents' voice, and you're either comfortable or not comfortable even before you're born. But certainly in the first year or two, and you don't have a lot of vocabulary, your brain is interpreting what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're touching, what you're tasting, in positive or negative ways. Okay, if as a child you sat there in wet clothes, that's uncomfortable, that's negative, you cry. Okay, if you're hungry for a long period of time, you cry, that's negative. If you're warm and your mother's cuddling you and it's a really nice, warm, fuzzy feeling, that's positive, and that goes into your brain then along a pathway in your brain, a sort of a trunk with branches off of it that is either positive or negative. And in the first few years you could have literally thousands and thousands of these events, and so it develops a dominant pathway in your brain where similar thoughts, similar experiences, similar events get coded. Okay, now we could get into how it's coded into the brain, but that's not as important as just realizing that your brain is structured in a pattern, and it depends on the experiences that you've had. Now in sociology we call this socialization, but it's not anything really fancy. Anybody could appreciate that your first few years are very important to how that is going to affect you to look at the world. If this pattern continues, you're just going to be faced with a mind that looks at everything negative, or you might be very positive. More likely, by the time you're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, you're seeing that there's both positive and negative things all the time, and certainly by the time you're an adult, you've probably had millions of these events, and they're going into the brain in patterns. Okay? Now, I don't think that you can remember everything in life. Some people say you can, but you can check that out, see how much you could remember when you're 3, 4, 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old. And I think there's a limit. I think it's more like a computer today where you're putting things on the screen, and if you want to save it, you have to hit the save button. But in your brain, it has to be something different, something dramatic, or something that you've emphasized to remember it. And I think it's always going to be related to what's already in your brain, related to similar events. So a lot of things just get forgotten and passed over, but it's those singular kinds of events where somebody says something to you, or somebody causes you conflict. They're conflict events that stay with you, or really good events too. Now I ask my students if they can go back to the very first thing they can remember in life without it being a photograph or being told by somebody. And typically, people can start remembering things at 3, 4, 5, 6. A lot of times, it's the first bicycle attempt and you fell off, or a bug went in your mouth, or a lot of times it's the first, your third birthday or your fourth birthday, and you have a lot of people around, and it's just a good time, okay? More often than not, it's the first things you remember are not really the best. In my case, I was probably 3.5 years old. We were living with my grandparents. We were up. I was upstairs at the top of a very steep stairway, and I just found my cousin's wooden barn, and I was holding at the top of the stairway, and I was trying to look over the top to see where the steps was to carry it downstairs. I lost my balance, and I rolled with that barn all the way down and right out into the dining room in my grandparents' house. And I remember that like it happened yesterday, and it would have been, quite a while ago. And then after that, I remember when we moved into the house on the first farm we lived in, and I can remember some things happening there on the farm. Like climbing this rope, and I get up to the top, and I'm looking at the knot, and I'm seeing that it's unraveling, and boom, I went down and knocked the wind out of me. So, those are the kind of things we remember. But I have a friend that was a juvenile prosecutor in the county just next door, and he probably had that job for 10 years. And he one time told me that in all the time that he was a juvenile prosecutor, he never sent a girl or boy to the training school who came from what he would call a good family. Okay, let me repeat that. He never sent a boy or girl to the training school who came from a good family, a good environment. And so I asked him, what is a bad environment? And he had all kinds of examples of young people who were raised in homes where they would get spanked or beat on a regular basis, who were locked into closets, who were locked in the basement, who were not fed on a regular basis, or if they were in an environment where the parent was alcoholic, or in some cases they were cooking meth in the home. So when the child was in that kind of environment, it created all kinds of conflict for them. Conflict with their family, conflict with the school sometimes, conflict with their friends outside, and it created an expectation in their mind of how the world was. So that becomes a perspective of how you look at the world. And now in a good home, you're hoping that you have parents that love the child, care for the child, make sure that their needs are taken care of, and at the same time don't overdo it. And I see that happening, where parents try to do everything. They're overprotective, they're over strict, and what is happening is by the time the teenagers, 14, 15, they're just trying anything they can to get away, to have their own ability to make some decisions. So it can appear to be a good family, but inside there can be some dynamics that really create a lot of conflict for young people. But I also see where we've gotten to a point where we sort of coddle our young people. We really don't let them fail and learn from mistakes. We want to prevent them. We want to prevent them from getting hurt. We don't want them to fall off the bike. So we run along the side, We take them to school, we pick them up, we don't let them walk home. There's all kinds of examples of parents overdoing the parenting and not letting the child figure out, how to solve problems. So it's not unusual to find teenagers and young adults that are not good at problem solving. And what I'm suggesting is that it is a skill. It's a skill just like learning how to hammer and saw. It's a skill just like fixing an engine. Problem solving requires certain knowledge and certain skills on how to apply those known skills to different kinds of problems. Okay? So a lot of things have happened in what our families are like, and one of the most devastating things has been so many families end up in divorce, and a lot of times that creates his kids, her kids, and our kids, and that can create a lot of tension inside a home where the kid feels that they're wanted or somebody even gives a damn about them. Okay, at a point where a young person doesn't feel like anybody gives a damn, then they stop giving a damn about the people around them or the world, basically. Okay, so if you're a parent and you're facing these kind of issues, I don't think there's a right way to be a parent necessarily. I think it comes down to being connected to your children, doing whatever you can to benefit them, but with some limits, so that they learn how to solve problems and make mistakes, and live in what really is a very competitive world with some realistic kinds of ideas of where they fit in that world. Okay, we all can't be princesses or kings or queens, but we can have very positive ideas about ourselves, no matter what station in life we have, no matter what kind of jobs we have. There are things that you can be very satisfied and pat yourself on the back for giving it everything you got. Okay, so you can be positive even in some pretty negative environments as you're growing up. So I don't like the idea that you can blame your parents or blame your environment or blame your neighborhood, or that doesn't do you any good. What you need to do is figure out what kind of effect those events and experiences have had on you, and grow out of them, grow above them. Okay, so this first exercise where you see the positive and negatives and you can kind of divide it out, you can take that farther, and I would like you to write, maybe as a journal or just a few pages, whether you think you're a positive or negative person. Because if you're a negative person, that's important to understand. And it could be that your problems are making you negative, but it could be that you just had a lot of those kind of experiences and you got to work your way out of that. Now, I don't think there's any light switch you can hit and turn a negative person positive overnight. That's not realistic. I think you're going to have to set a path that's going to take you from where you are to where you want to go. That's problem solving. And it could take you a while. And in a couple of my life experiences, it took 10 years to get back to a point where I had a house that I was comfortable in, and I had cars that I was comfortable with, had a job that I was comfortable with, and everything was okay with the family. And you may think that a professor is made of money, and that's just not true. I go paycheck to paycheck, and many times the end of the month I'm looking for ways to buy milk, for my family now. So I don't want you to misunderstand that I'm coming from some place and I'm talking to you from a pedestal at all. I've been there, and I've faced many of the same problems I'm guessing you have in different circumstances. Okay, I haven't been to war, but I've built homes in a foreign country, and rebels took over that area, and the national police came and told me that the rebels were after me and they intended to kidnap and kill me. So I've been there. That's pretty intense. I've had some experiences where I figured, this old farmer from Iowa was going to buy the farm, and I felt very lucky to get out of those situations, and I've had some good people help me through some of those situations. So I've been in, some experiences that have taught me that I have a core, a part of me someplace that can stand up to about anything, and I may not win or lose there, but it's not going to crush me as an individual. I've learned that after a while you get out of the bed and you move forward. Okay, I can remember having a dream after I lost the house, and I had put everything into getting this house. It was a earth-sheltered house underground. It was our offices and our home. It was a beautiful home. My students helped me build it, and everything went wrong. The weather was so bad we couldn't get out of the house. We converted part of it into a restaurant, and nobody could get to the restaurant. And what really happened was the interest rate went from 6 or 7% when we started to build it to 18% when it was finished, and this was part of the economy, and there wasn't anything the bank could do or I could do. They foreclosed on me, December 23rd. That was a low point, and I can remember having this reoccurring dream where I was standing out on this point like a cliff, and the winds were going around and around and around me like I was in the middle of a tornado. And I was just leaning into the wind, trying to stand up, and this went on for weeks. Every night I'd have this same dream, and I'm sure it was all of the turmoil that I was feeling inside. And then all of a sudden, that wind went around and went up in the air, and it came right down to the top of my head, right through my body. And I just bolted out of bed, and I knew that I wasn't going to give another thought to the problems. It was time to move on. Okay? So that's not a light switch. It doesn't happen overnight. And luckily I was able to find a new job, and we were able to move, and I've never been back to that site. Okay? So you have to learn to move on and deal with your issues so they don't hang on you like baggage. I had an older student in class one time said that he'd spent his whole life, trying to put his shit together, and now at 45 he suddenly learned that it was too heavy to carry. So I've seen that, midlife crisis kind of thing, that you just don't see the answers in front of you anymore. But I'm telling you that you have to train yourself. You have to give yourself this set of skills to deal with every issue that comes at you. And you can, in almost every case, find a solution, find a pathway out, okay? So that first exercise, do it and then write about whether or not you're positive or negative. You can also look at this by taking your sheet of paper and writing from 1 to 10. And let me give you a trigger word that I just like you to free associate, it's called. And just write down words that trigger off of this word that I give you. And you write 10 words or 15 words, just coming off of your brain, and write them down, okay? And the trigger word is blue, okay? It could be blue sky, it could be blue ocean, it could be, whatever blue reminds you of, just write them down, okay? And then after you've written down 10 or so, go back and put beside each word whether that word was positive or negative to you, okay? As you're free associating, just letting your mind sort of flow with it, you'll find that it runs in streaks. The words could be positive, 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 and then it could go negative, negative, or it could be all positive or all negative words, or they might be all words that really don't have any positive or negative feeling to them, which is another pattern, okay? But I'd like you to look at that pattern of those words, and again, to see if you're a negative person or a positive person in general. Now, at one time, I'd have the students do 100 words, and I found that, most people can't come to 100 words. It may even be difficult for you to come to 10, but it's important to get your mind to kind of free flow and see if it's running positive or negative. And I would add that kind of experience to your paper on whether or not you're negative or positive. A third exercise that I would encourage you to try is called the House Tree Person Personality Test. This is an actual paper exercise that they give young kids, usually adolescents in school. And I'd like you to take your paper and draw 2 lines on it, so you have three equal spaces there. And when you have that done, again, you can pause to take a minute to do that. It doesn't need to be fancy, just three parts of the paper. In the one on the left, what I'd like you to do is draw a house. Any old house. Just take your time, stop the video, and draw a house. It can be fancy, it can be simple, and whatever kind of house you'd like to. Okay. In the middle section, I'd like you to draw a tree, any old tree. And again, take your time. It doesn't need to be done in a quick minute or anything. And draw a tree. And in the third box, I'd like you to draw a person. We all have sort of an image in our mind, and a lot of times we draw this person over and over again as doodles. But I'd like you to draw a person in the third section here. Okay, so you have a house, a tree, and a person. And what I'd like you to do is just quickly look at those three images. Now, this is coming off your brain, and I'm not telling you what to draw. So this could be another kind of free association. In the counseling setting with a counselor, they might ask a young child who's having trouble at school to draw up these pictures, and they're using it just to get them to relax and talk about things. So it's not a prescriptive kind of exercise where you can, aha, I see a squirrel here, that means something, something, something. This is an exercise to just get you thinking about how you're drawing these images. Okay, and what I'd like you to first look at is to see if you find any life in these pictures. Is there smoke coming out of a chimney? Is there people in the driveway? Are there dogs and cats there? Are people living there? Okay, in the tree, are there apples in the tree? Is there squirrels running around? Is there grass on the ground? Does it look like the tree is alive? A lot of times that big bushy tree is a good example of life. And I've seen, apples in the tree and birds flying in the air. That's a sign of life. And in the person, it's going to be that you actually drawn, eyes, nose, and mouth, ears on them. They have clothes on. They have shoes on. All of those are signs of life, okay? So if in all three of the pictures you see some signs of life, that's fairly positive, okay? Because a lot of times people who are negative don't see any life, okay? And I just ask you to take a few minutes and look at that to see. Now, there's some other things you can do. For example, you can draw a crosshair on each one of those three images and check to see if your images are right dominated or left dominated. In other words, if more of the image is on the right side, then typically that would indicate that you have conflict and you have some aggression about that conflict. You're conflicted, okay, and that would be consistent on all three of those. If you're on the left and you're more the driveway's on the left and the smokestack's on the left and the tree leans to the left and you're facing left, that's a different kind of conflict, and it's sort of like you're being suppressed and people are weighing down on you and you're feeling like you're maybe being taken advantage of in some way. It's a very docile, dominated kind of pattern. And again, you can't just draw these and come out with a clear conclusion like that, but it's just to get you thinking about it. Now, if your images are very top-heavy, like the big roof, the big tree, branches, the big bushy tree, and a big head on a stick person, that usually indicates that you're very concerned about what people are thinking of you from the outside. You're socially dominated, okay? And again, it's just how you are thinking about it. But if you're dominant on the bottom, everything is really on the bottom of the picture. You don't have the big bushy tree. You have individual limbs, but you have a great big trunk. And the person has a small head, a big body, and usually the big shoes. That kind of pattern of being bottom dominated on these three pictures would indicate someone who's not concerned about how society looks at them. You're very independent. You're really only worried about how you look at the world, how you perform in the world, what you think, okay? So you see some basic kinds of differences in personality, basically, with right and left dominant and top and bottom. And again, you might want to just look at these images that you've drawn and try to describe how you're looking at the world, okay? If you're very negative, you're down, you're going to show it in those images. If you're, have some hope in there and you're feeling like the world is friendly around you, then that's a different set of perspectives that you kind of need to keep in mind. So this would be a point where you could stop and write, a couple pages. I'm not asking you to write a, 100-page autobiography or anything like that. 2 or 3 pages might be very adequate to just express yourself about who you are and how you look at the world, whether you're positive or negative. And the reason for this is it's going to reflect on how your brain is structured. Now you could hear people say, well, he's wired that way. I don't think of it's a matter of being wired, but I think your mind develops a pattern of how the events are interpreted going into your brain, and that your brain is going to function along those lines for the most part, okay? So that would be the first exercise I would ask you to do, is to write a short piece about where you are and how you perceive the world around you, okay? Now let's think about that, how that brain is put together. Because as you're having these events come in, these experiences, you're having different people as you grow older influence you. First you have your parents and your brothers and sisters, then you have outside friends, and then you have people at school, classmates, teachers, coaches, people in the community, and they could be influencing you positive or negatively. I mean, any of those characters could have either a positive or negative influence on you. But if everything is balanced in how they influence you, the pattern that you develop in your mind is going to be balanced too. If it's all positive, that could be, a negative down the road. But if it's a positive environment, then that's going to give you some confidence to try things and develop your own identity. If it's negative, a lot of negative things happening, then that creates some conflict inside you, and you have to deal with that. And you could be a bitter person, you could be angry, you could be physically aggressive, and a lot of times those kinds of behaviors come from those life experiences, and they'll get you into trouble. And that may have been reason why you ended up in jail or prison. Okay, and what we're finding is that maybe 60-70% of the people that end up in prison are being labeled as being attention deficit disorder, which is a label that I don't buy into. I don't really agree with it. I think our counseling psychiatric kinds of history has moved us to try to label everything, and I don't think that we should be labeling everybody as attention deficit disorder or bipolar or there's all kinds of labels that are now being put on kids, and once they're labeled, that's what they think they are, okay? But in effect, how your brain works is a result of all the kinds of experiences you've been having, and also it has an awful lot to do with your chemistry in your brain. If you went to school every day with a candy bar and a bottle of pop, a can of pop, your brain chemistry is going to be dramatically different and attention deficit disorder like than if you had a decent breakfast or had any breakfast at all. Do you follow? So your brain isn't really a mystery box. It's an organism, a biochemical organism that depends on certain variables getting to it. For example, water. If you're not getting water, not drinking enough water, and water makes up 60-70% of your entire body, and in your brain it's making up 70-80% of your cells in your brain. And you have to understand that water is the mechanism that moves oxygen and nutrition from your blood into your brain cells. Okay, so if you're not drinking enough water, then those brain cells aren't working right. They're not getting the oxygen, they're not getting the nutrition out of the bloodstream. And we have, a lot of people are saying that maybe 30-40% of Americans, for example, are dehydrated. They're not drinking enough water. So I'm talking about how your body functions, how your brain functions physically, and water is one of the most important. A second one is oxygen. Again, we're developing lifestyles where people are sitting around watching TV or sitting at a desk all day, and we're only breathing from about the top third of our lungs. So the bottom 2/3 of our lung is just sitting there, not really taking in, a deep breath, and that is reducing the amount of oxygen going into your bloodstream and into your brain. I get people telling me, students particularly, saying, well, it's like walking around and I'm in a fog all the time. But that fog is a result of the things I'm talking about right now. It's not that you're brain dead or that you need medicine or psychiatric drugs to bring you out of the fog like they would like you to believe. You need water, you need nutrition, you need sleep. If you're only getting 2 or 3, 4 hours of sleep a night, your brain needs to rest. You need a certain amount of sleep, you need a certain amount of exercise to get, the cells to move things in and out. You need to avoid stress. If you're under a lot of stress, that's going to affect your sleep, that's going to affect your immune system, and, you can get screwed up real fast if you're not taking care of yourself. So I'd like to relate a story that I've used in some of the other videos, but I had a student in her 30s who I had several years ago who came to me and asked to have a cup of coffee, and she wanted to thank me. She had gone through some life experiences. She'd gotten married early, divorced early, got very depressed, had been to a lot of counselors. She had a number of prescribed psychiatric drugs that she was using. They kept her in a fog. They didn't allow her to, really solve any of her problems. So she turned to pot. And she felt like, she was doing okay. She actually got an A in my class, wrote very good papers. But still, she was always in a fog. And then she dropped out of school, got a job, working 60 hours a week, making some good money. Had gotten to a point where she was able to get a better car and move to a better apartment. I actually bought rented some furniture, I guess. So she was feeling like things were coming together. She was living the American dream in a way. And she was hoping that she'd be moved up to a supervisor's position, so she'd even be making more money. And that's when a former boyfriend called the employer and told them that she was smoking pot. They tested her and fired her in just a matter of a day or two, and she was unemployed, no income. And she lost, she had to give back the car, she had to move out of the apartment, and she was dealing with a downward slope. I call it the great American roller coaster that we see people going through, up and down, up and down. And she was really struggling at the bottom. And she told me that she had got into a state of mind where she couldn't see tomorrow. She was honestly thinking about suicide. Now, if we go back to how that brain is working, I can see that you have the possibility of developing a loop and those thought patterns. And if everything is negative, it's just going around negative, negative, negative. You're getting up in the morning and why even get up? Nobody cares. I'm not going to be able to do anything today. It's just going to be a bad day. There's nothing here to eat. It's just negative, negative, negative. It kind of loops back, just keeps going around and around this negative loop until you get to the point where you give up. It's not worth doing anything anymore, okay? And that's where somebody gets to the suicidal level, okay? And that's a pretty bad place to get to. So she had gotten to that level, and somehow she remembered my talking about this in class, that people need to take care of the basics. And she remembered that I said that you needed to drink more water. And I don't know how she pulled that out of her memory, but she didn't like water. She told me that she probably hadn't deliberately drank just water in 10 years. I mean, she had coffee, she would use it to wash down pills, but just to deliberately go drink water, she wouldn't do it. Well, she decided to give it a try, and over a couple of weeks she was drinking water. Then she decided to try to eat some healthier food. She wasn't eating meals at all, and I'm finding that with my students that they're not eating right. I mean, they're eating potato chips and Twinkies, and they think their body will survive. And that's not true. Your body needs 56 basic chemicals to survive, and you can get those chemicals in different foods, but if you're only eating bologna sandwiches, you're not getting that nutrition that you need. That nutrition is needed by your brain. That water is needed by your brain. That oxygen is needed by your brain. And if you're not getting these kind of things, if you're not getting the rest, your brain is going to be in negative mode. I don't know how else you can say it. And all of those things can help you to, as she said, I got my life back. Okay? So you need to be able to look at how to solve problems. On one side, you have to get, into a lifestyle where you're getting all of those basics. And if you're not, no matter how much problem solving you learn how to do, your brain isn't going to be able to be there to function for you, okay? So that's the second thing I'd like you to do. I would like you to analyze your lifestyle. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough water? If 30 or 40% of the people in America are dehydrated, it also turns out that 30-40% are constipated. That's a function. And we think we're too busy to do those kind of basic things, but they can cause real problems. And another thing that I think you need to be aware of is that there's chemicals around you in your environment. And those chemicals could be, the drugs, prescription drugs you're taking. They could be the less than legal drugs that you're taking. But it could also be, you're located at an intersection and 30,000 cars are going by and spewing out all kinds of lead and benzene in the air that you're breathing. So you need to protect yourself to have an environment of things that you breathe and things that you eat and things that you drink that are healthy. You don't need to be pure organic or anything like that. You don't have to spend a lot of money, but you need variety. You need to have all of the kinds of food sources there, and if you're not, you can be in trouble. And you need to learn how to relax. This is a huge issue with people. They have so much stress going on, and stress really can kill you. Literally, it can cause your immune system to go down, and all of a sudden, you're getting sore throats, and then strep throat, and then you're getting, lumps in your under your arms. That's the pattern. It's a cause and effect kind of world. Now, the medical community wants you to think, well, bad things happen to good people, and we can't explain why some people get cancers or have heart disease, but that's actually a bunch of baloney. Every disease you can get, you're the cause of it. Let me tell you again, every disease you can get, you're the cause of it in one way or the other. It may be very complicated. It's not like, you do this and you get, this disease, but either you were exposed to some environmental chemicals or errant electricity or electromagnetic energy, or you were drinking some water that had lead in it, yeah, or you were taking medicines that were causing you to have all kinds of problems. To be honest, I don't understand, why America doesn't ban the advertising of pharmaceuticals. I think we're one of the one or two countries in the world that allow that kind of advertising. Uh, we banned the advertising of alcohol and cigarettes. I think we need to ban this wholesale advertising of prescription drugs. It's so bad that I saw an ad where they wouldn't even tell you what the drug was connected to. They wanted you to go to the doctor and ask about, maybe I need this kind of drug. And what we're seeing lately is you have this ad for, I'm not going to tell you the name of it, but it's for a certain kind of health condition, and it's about a 30-second ad, and the last 20 seconds are all the bad things that can happen if you take this drug, and include anxiety and depression, even suicide. Why would you take a drug that has a side effect that might be suicide? And they want you to go to the doctor and sign up for it. But then the very next ad is some attorney's office out of Houston or Dallas or someplace, and they're on a national campaign to file suit against that same pharmaceutical company and that same drug. And so we're having all kinds of health issues related to prescription drugs. And I've just read that people over 65 on average are taking 10 prescription drugs from 3 different doctors, and the third most likely reason somebody would die over 65 is heart disease, cancer, and interaction of prescription drugs. It's crazy, okay? The medical community would want, and the psychiatric community would like you to feel that you're in good health when you're under their care and taking medicines. That's baloney. You're only in good health when you don't need any of those drugs, and we've gone a long ways towards making ourselves sick. That's how I'd put it. I think you're only healthy both mentally and physically when you don't need outside drugs and you don't need, a lot of counseling. It helps people, and I'm all for it if it helps you, but you're healthy when you feel healthy and when you get your life back and you feel that way, okay? So the second exercise, I'd like you to look at your lifestyle, what you eat, what you drink, how much sleep you're getting, and go do some research. There's all kinds of information out there on ideal lifestyles and diets. If you're too heavy, lose some weight, get some exercise. If you're not sleeping right, maybe it's exercise you need again. So there's some basics that I think you need to understand about your body and your mind, and they're only going to work at an optimal level if you take care of yourself, okay? So that would be the second paper that I would like you to deal with. Now, if you've thought about some of the problems you're dealing with and you've taken a look at whether you're positive, negative, and you've looked at your own personal health, your lifestyle, are you living healthy? Do you have people around you that are, supporting you and giving you good ideas, giving you advice? They don't have to tell you what to do, but they're there. They're supportive people. They're people that give a damn about you. That's a very important part of being around. And a lot of people don't have that. But if you've come that far, I would like you to isolate 1 or 2 issues that are weighing the heaviest on you, okay? And I would like you to put that on a piece of paper, and then I would like you to create 2 lists. One list is option A of how you can resolve that issue. And option B would be another set of things that you could do to resolve that issue. Instead of just coming to one, I'd like you to come to 2 different options so that you can get your mind thinking about, well, if this doesn't work, then maybe this would work. you follow? And Benjamin Franklin was one of the first people that encouraged people to do this. Make a list, and a to-list, and go down it and put values on the items within the list. This is a positive 4, this is a positive 5, this is a positive 6, this is a positive 4, this is a minus 6, and maybe it costs too much, or you can't get that far to work. There's negatives in every solution. And look at another set of solutions and go down and put a +1, a +4, a +6, minus 10, look at them. And then divide it out. If I do this, these are the positives and these are the negatives to the solution. Over here, there's positive, negatives to this solution. And then say, what is it going to take to get from where I'm now to one of these solutions? Okay, so it's probably going to take some money. It's going to take a different car. It's going to take a different set of experiences. And maybe it's going to take some new friends. Okay. Make a list of what it's going to take to get to either one of these solutions, and then evaluate it. Is it reasonable? Is it realistic? Can I actually attain this kind of solution? And then you have to decide if you're willing to do it. Okay? Now, I'm just being honest. There could be a situation, a health situation, or a health situation of someone else that you just, you can't determine to make it any different than it is. So there's some situations that you're not just going to have magic answers to, and they're not going to, come to you in a day or two. They may be solutions that take you years to get to, which is my case. Okay, and you have to be ready to do the long haul on getting out of the situation you're in. Don't expect it to turn around in a day or two. Don't expect that everybody's going to agree with you immediately. And you need to make a commitment. You got to say to yourself, this is important to me, and I'm going to make it work. Okay? Without that commitment, you might as well be making New Year's resolutions and doing them for 3 days and forgetting it, okay? You need a plan. You need to write it out. You have to have goals. You need to write them out. This is what I want in 2 years. This is where I want to be in 5 years. This is where I want to be in 10 years, okay? You figure out what it's going to take to get there. And go after it, okay? Don't hesitate. Don't procrastinate. Make little steps. Do a little every day. If it's going to the library and reading, that's a great thing to do, okay? If talking to other friends to get better ideas, do that, okay? But don't just stall out. Don't stay in a negative loop. You gotta come off of that negative loop with positive options. And I would recommend starting small, like this student in my class, drinking water, exercising, eating healthy, getting some sleep. Those are things you can do. And if you start to feeling better about yourself and you're getting sleep and all of these things are working for you, then you have the opportunity to try some of the tougher things on your plan. Do you follow? Start small, take it step by step, and get people to support you. You don't have to do everything alone. There are people that would help you. There's organizations that'll help you. There's ministers, pastors, rabbis that'll help you. There's professionals that'll help you without it costing you anything. There's organizations that'll help you if you want to start a business, and they'll do it for free. Okay, you don't have to, say, well, I can't do this because I don't have money. Okay, so I'm hoping that by the time you've done this third exercise, you can see options that you can go after and feel good about yourself. It's time to get your life back. It's time to get moving ahead. Okay? So, send me those 3 exercises. I'll write back to you. I might have some other suggestions. I might have some other resources for you to look into, but I don't have magic answers for you. You have to come to the answers. You have to solve your own problem, and you have to pat yourself on the back once in a while, because we all go through this. Okay? You can do this. Have a good life. Okay? Thank you.